What's up guys, and welcome to Xbox Ready, the YouTube channel that is all about Xbox and being ready, I guess. I'm Ray, and I'm coming at you with another video to help keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of Xbox. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how Xbox has officially made history by revealing one of their biggest secrets. And we'll wrap up the video talking about how Xbox is doubling the awesomeness of Game Pass. And remember, if you want to stay Xbox ready, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell to be alerted whenever I post a new video. Let's discuss. So guys, the day is finally here, the day that we have all been waiting for. Xbox has finally revealed the 4 games that's going to be shipping to PS5 and Nintendo Switch. And guess what? They're the games that pretty much everyone knew about and that they were already talking about, so I guess it wasn't that big of a secret at all. It's so funny to think about, man. A couple weeks ago, everyone was freaking out because they were like, oh my god, Starfield's going to PlayStation 5, Indiana Jones is going to PS5, and I gotta be honest, guys, I was a little worried myself because some very credible people in the industry were reporting on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if this actually happens? And while the big guns like Starfield, like Indiana Jones may be ported over in the future, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. But it's so funny to think about how much has changed over just the past week or two. But anyways, Microsoft has confirmed the 4 games that are being brought over to PlayStation 5 and Switch. On February 22nd, by the time you're watching this video, Pentiment will be on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. Hi-Fi Rush will be on PlayStation 5 by the end of March 19th. I'm a little surprised that Hi-Fi Rush does not have a Switch version. That took me off guard a little bit. That seems like the perfect game for Switch. And watch, all the PlayStation owners that were saying, oh, Hi-Fi Rush is bad, looks like a cartoon comic game that you would find on PlayStation 3. Watch, they're gonna play it and be like, oh my gosh, this game is actually really good. On April 16th, Grounded is gonna be on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. And finally, April 30th, Sea of Thieves is gonna be sailing over to PlayStation 5. These games have been linked to multi-platform rumors for a few weeks now, I'd say like a good month or so ago. But with this official announcement, Xbox is putting their money where their mouth is. They want more people to experience their games, even if that means shipping them over to rival consoles. But they're not overextending their hand too much. They're not shipping over the big AAA exclusives like we were just talking about. Like, why do I really care if Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves gets ported over to PlayStation 5? Great games, but I haven't played them in like 2 or 3 years. This also reinforces the fact that Xbox did a really great job of setting fan expectations during that big announcement that occurred last week on the Xbox official podcast. They said 2 single-player games, 2 smaller games that were more passion projects for the studios that developed them are going to be ported over, as well as 2 community-driven games. Sea of Thieves was the obvious one. I wasn't so sure about the second one, but after some more thought, I was like, oh, Grounded makes sense. And those are the exact games that are being shipped over. This is what all the fuss was about over the past couple of weeks. Personally, I think it's exciting that 2 Obsidian-developed games are going to be exposed to a wider audience. Phil Spencer mentioned during his appearance on the podcast that this is an opportunity for them to further invest in the studios behind these games because they're making more money by being exposed to more people on more platforms. If anyone deserves further investment by Microsoft, it's Obsidian. They are a super underrated first-party studio for Xbox. They are the definition of bang for your buck. They make great games, they do it efficiently, they over-deliver with a fraction of the budget that these other studios have. Grounded is a really fun, great game, and I think a total of 12, 15 people made that. Same thing with Pentiment. They may not be games that are gonna blow up and get Fortnite numbers, but they're awesome projects that are different from what you would typically see in the industry nowadays. So while I'm excited for all of these games to get a renewed audience, I'm especially excited that Obsidian is getting another chance. So yes, we can all go ahead and stop freaking out about this. We know the 4 games that are being shipped to other consoles. It's not Gears of War 5, it's not Starfield, it's not Indiana Jones, but make no mistake, this is just a baby step for Xbox and Microsoft. If these 4 games, if they do well, if they see a good return on this, they're for sure gonna consider this for their bigger titles. The one restriction is that they're not gonna ship over games that are a year out from release, but 2, 3, 5 years? Why not? But at that point though, you'd have to assume that the majority of Xbox fans have played these games. We would have gotten them day one on Game Pass, played them, have our fun with them, and then moved on. So with that line of thinking, like, why retain exclusivity at that point? Why not ship them out to other platforms? I've gone through a great period of personal growth, guys. I'm kind of softening my stance on the whole exclusives thing. I'm willing to give Xbox a shot with this whole multi-platform strategy, if they play their cards right. Again, that's a statement that maybe 5-10 years from now I'm gonna regret, like, oh my gosh, that ended up being the worst decision that Xbox could make, but I'm willing to give it a shot and see how it plays out as a fan. And speaking of 5-10 years down the line, the future of Xbox, one of the biggest questions on people's minds, a big question on my mind personally, was if Xbox is going to continue having physical discs for their games. Before all of this multi-platform speculation craziness, we saw a lot of stuff pointing towards a future where Xbox didn't have discs anymore. We saw that Microsoft shut down the division that's responsible for releasing physical games to retail. We heard reports that certain retailers were just dropping Xbox discs entirely, like Walmart here in the US and some major retailers in the European Union. For weeks, it was looking like the digital Series X was going to be a thing. All of that added up to cause a lot of stress and anxiety for people who are die-hard fans of physical media. Well, Phil Spencer, the man himself, offered a very promising update for anyone that still has questions regarding that situation. While he still won't acknowledge the document leaks that feature the digital Series X, he point blank said, "We are supportive of physical media, but we don't have a need to drive that disproportionate to customer demand. We ship games physically and digitally, and we're really just following what the customers are doing. And I think our job in running Xbox is to deliver the things that a majority of the customers want. And right now, a majority of our customers are buying games digitally." So on one hand, he's saying, okay, we're not going to move on from physical discs. It's not part of our strategy to ditch them entirely. But on the other hand, he's leaving the door open, saying like, but guys, like 80% of our customers are buying their games digitally. So he's laying down the groundwork, planting the seeds of like, listen, we're gonna do what the customers want. And if at one point 99% of customers are buying their games digitally, then we're gonna probably follow that. My personal takeaway from this is that for the next 5-6 years, physical Xbox discs are still gonna be a thing. Or whatever, like, disc equivalent that we have. You know what I mean. Sometimes we get physical discs, and they're just like a key. They give you permission to download the game from the servers. My other takeaway from this, sadly, is that I feel like this is the final nail in the coffin of the digital series.
Me, Jimmy from PS Ready. Ray has a segment coming up where he's talking about the all-digital Xbox, and he's like, oh, this will never happen. This is never going to happen. Well, Xputer is reporting that not only does Xbox have an all-digital Xbox Series X in the work that they're going to release this summer, or at least announced this summer at their summer games showcase that they do every year, but it's going to come in white. And there's a really cool render of it alongside the tweet I originally saw this in, where it still keeps that nice green shading across the mesh layer on top of the Xbox Series X. I think it looks pretty cool. The thing I don't like is that this report is suggesting that this new Xbox Series X that's all digital, the white version, is going to completely replace the original Series X, which does come along with the disc drive. I get that the Series S doesn't have a disc drive, and that's the most popular Xbox this generation, but it just feels a little bit weird to take away the option, at least, to buy a version with a disc drive. I mean, even if they did something like what Sony does with the PS5 Slim, where you can get an optional disc drive for the Slim if you buy the digital one, and then just pop it on the side, throw the different faceplate on, and while it looks a little bit janky, at least you have the option there. Because while yes, you can download all of the backwards compat titles digitally and play them on your Series X, I have a lot of those games on disc, and currently you can just put your original Xbox disc or your 360 disc in the console, and it'll download the digital version from the cloud and allow you to use your disc as an activation key. But I already own those games, so I don't want to have to re-buy them. I also think there are a fair few people out there who do pick up games physically still, even if they are on Xbox. I know Xbox is a little bit different than PlayStation, and they heavily encourage digital playing just by like whether you buy the games games, or you play them on Game Pass, obviously you're not getting a disc there. But yeah, the silver lining here is by taking out the disc drive, it looks like it's going to come with a little bit of a price drop. I would guess it would be around $350 or $400. Maybe that will do a good job of moving the needle in terms of sales for the Series X and even the Series S, because that black one is pretty cool. But yeah, a lot of Ray's thoughts are in the next segment. I just wanted to jump in here and correct it real quick. I'm going to shoot back over to him.
I'm one of the only people in the world that was actually excited for the digital Series X. Yes, it looked goofy. Yes, there's no disk drive, whatever, but I was like, that, for me personally, sounds cool. They did say that a lot of the stuff that we saw from those document leaks back in September were scrapped projects or projects that they've moved on from or projects that they've pivoted on, like Project Keystone, the little box that was just like a streaming-only console. But there was a moment where Tom Warren came out and said that, okay, well, I know that they're probably going to announce that new controller that was in those documents, and in those documents, it says that they're going to release a new console, the Digital Series X, along with a new controller. So I was like, well, if they're coming out with the controller, why aren't they going to come out with the Digital Series X? First of all, we know that they're going to announce new consoles at the end of this year. They said as much during that Xbox Official Podcast episode. And if they're still going to invest money in having physical Xbox discs, why would they put out a console that couldn't even use those discs? But even if we don't have a semi-new Xbox to look forward to as fans, we're going to get a massive upgrade to Game Pass. It's going to double in awesomeness. Because Phil Spencer reiterated that the full catalog of Activision Blizzard titles is going to be added to Game Pass. Now, there's been a lot of questions around this. This is like the number one thing that fans wanted when Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard. But since they closed the deal, it's been kind of slow moving. We haven't really seen any tangible benefits as fans yet. It hasn't trickled down. They fired a bunch of people and then they released a Call of Duty that everyone was pretty mad at. And Xbox leadership did come out and they tried to temper expectations. They were like, listen, it's going to take a long time for us to integrate the companies, so give us some time in terms of porting over games to Game Pass. But it seems like with all this multi-platform rumors, fans threatening to leave the Xbox brand, it kind of seems like that lit a fire under their butt and they were like, okay, we got to give an update, a concrete one about Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass. Last week, they announced that Diablo 4 was going to be added to Game Pass at the end of March on the 28th, which is crazy because when we heard about this deal way back in the beginning of January 2022, that was the first thing I said. I was like, man, wouldn't it be dope if the next Diablo was on Game Pass and I could play it on Game Pass? That would be sick. And now, that day is almost here. Too bad I already bought it and I beat the main campaign. Phil Spencer says, our intent is the full portfolio of games from ZeniMax, Activision Blizzard, and XGS, Xbox Game Studios, will be on Game Pass day one. And obviously, that would include Call of Duty. And once they start getting Call of Duty onto Game Pass, I suspect that they're going to see a massive boost in subscriber numbers. Okay, maybe not massive, but they're going to see an uptick for sure. But I know that there are some complications with that, like in terms of contracts that Activision has with Sony, for example. I wonder if they're going to be able to add the newest Call of Duties day one, or if they'd have to wait a year, or if they had to wait for like other obligations to be fulfilled. I'm not entirely sure. We know that Activision Blizzard, as a business, before they were bought out, they were not a fan of subscription services. None of their games were ever going to be on Xbox Game Pass or PS Plus Extra or Nvidia GeForce Now. They were literally like, screw that. No, we want people to buy the games and then spend more money on microtransactions in our games and rinse and repeat, baby. Of course, now that they're owned by Microsoft, I assume they don't really have a say in the matter. But I'm genuinely curious to see how they handle Call of Duty and Game Pass going forward. Because if you're Microsoft and if you're Xbox, you're like, we want Call of Duty on Game Pass. That is the moneymaker. That's what's going to sell subscriptions. Yeah. But as with many things in life, it may not be so easy. Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff I have to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready, and we'll see you in the next video.